And we're going to continue with this chapter of Mary Poppins. I believe we're on the 6th chapter. Let me peek here. Yeah, it's the 6th chapter, Bad Tuesday, the infamous chapter that P.L. Travers rewrote, replacing the stereotyped people with animals in every region. We have met an Eskimo family. We have met a black family where some of the language used to describe them was totally inappropriate, and I did not repeat it here on the reading. We are now going east to presumably meet a Chinese family. Plug your nose, hold your ears, we're going in. The world went spinning again, and presently, it seemed to the astonished children only a few seconds, the palm trees were no longer there, and when the spinning movement ceased, they found themselves in a street lined with curiously shaped and very small houses. These appeared to be made of paper, and the curved roofs were hung with little bells that rang gently in the breeze. Over the houses, almond and plum trees spread branches weighed down with bright blossom, and along the little street people in strange flowery garments were quietly walking. It was a most pleasant and peaceful scene. "I believe we are in China," whispered Jane to Michael. "Yes, I'm sure we are," she went on as they watched the door of one of the little paper houses opening, and an old man stepped through it. He was curiously dressed in a stiff brocade kimono of gold, and silken trousers gathered in with a gold ring at the ankles. His shoes turned up at the toes very stylishly, and from his head there hung a long gray pigtail which reached nearly to his knees, and from his lips drooped as far as his waist a very long mustache. The old gentleman, seeing the little group formed by Mary Poppins and the children, bowed so low that his head touched the ground. Jane and Michael were surprised to see Mary Poppins bowing in the same way, till the daisies in her hat were brushing the earth. "Where are your manners?" hissed Mary Poppins, looking up at them from that unusual position. She said it so fiercely that they thought they had better bow too, and the twins bent their foreheads against the edge of their perambulator. The old man, rising ceremoniously, began to speak. "Honorable Mary of the House of Poppins," he said, "deign to shed upon my unworthy abode the light of your virtuous countenance, and I beseech you lead thither to its graceless hearth these other honorable travellers." He made another bow and waved his hand toward the house. Jane and Michael had never heard such strange and beautiful language, and were very astonished, but much more so when Mary Poppins herself answered the invitation with equal ceremony. "Gracious sir," she began, "it is with deep regret that we, the humblest of your acquaintances, must refuse your expansive and more than royal invitation. The lamb does not leave the ewe, nor the young bird its nest, more unwillingly than we depart from your shining presence. But, noble and 10 times splendid sir, we are in the act of encompassing the world, and our visit to your humble city can, alas, be but momentary. Permit us, therefore, to remove our unworthy persons from you without further ceremony." The mandarin, for such indeed he was, bent his head and was preparing another elaborate bow when Mary Poppins very quickly moved the compass again. "West," she said firmly. Round went the world till Jane and Michael were quite dizzy, and when it grew still again they found themselves hurrying with Mary Poppins through great pine woods toward a clearing where several tents were pitched round a huge fire. In and out of the firelight flickered dark figures crowned with feathers and wearing loose tunics and trousers of fringed doeskin. One of the largest of these figures broke away from the rest and came hurrying toward Mary Poppins and the children. "Morning Star Mary," he said. "Greetings." And he bent over her and touched his forehead with hers. Then he turned to the 4 children and did the same to them. "My wigwam awaits you," he said in a grave, friendly voice. "We are just frying a reindeer for supper." "Chief son at noonday," said Mary Poppins. "We have only dropped in. Indeed, we have come, as it were, to say good-bye. We have been round the world, and this is our last port of call." "Ha! Is that so?" said the chief, looking very interested. "I have often thought of doing that myself, but surely you can spend a little time with us, if only for so long as to let this young person," he nodded at Michael, "try his strength against my great-great-great-grandson, fleet as the wind." The chief clapped his hands. "Hi, ho, he!" he called loudly, and from the tents a little Indian boy ran toward them. He came swiftly up to Michael, and when he reached him, he flicked him lightly on the shoulder. "Touched you last," he said, and ran like a hare. That was too much for Michael. With a bound he was after him, with Jane on the heels of both. The three of them went dodging among the trees, circling one huge pine again and again, as fleet as the wind led them on, always laughing and always out of reach. Jane dropped behind, beaten, but Michael was angry now and set his teeth and fled screaming after Fleet as the Wind, determined not to be outrun by an Indian boy. "I'll get you!" he cried, straining to run still faster. "What are you doing?" inquired Mary Poppins snappily. Michael looked back at her and stopped suddenly in his tracks. Then he turned again in the chase, but to his surprise there was no sign of Fleet as the Wind, nor the chief, nor the tents, nor the fire. There was not even a pine tree to be seen, nothing but a garden seat and Jane and the twins and Mary Poppins standing in the middle of the park. "Running round and round the garden seat, as if you had gone mad. One would think you'd be naughty enough for one day. Come along," said Mary Poppins. Michael pushed out his mouth sulkily. "All round the world and back again in a minute. What a wonderful box," Jane said happily. "Give me my compass," demanded Michael rudely. "My compass, thank you," said Mary Poppins, and she put it away in her pocket. Michael looked at her as if he would like to kill her, and indeed, what he felt like was very like what he looked. But he just shrugged his shoulders and stalked off in front of them, and would not say a word to anybody. "I could beat that boy any day," he assured himself as he went through the gate of number 17 and up the stairs. The burning weight still hung heavily within him. After the adventure with the compass, it seemed to grow worse, and toward the evening he grew naughtier and naughtier. He pinched the twins when Mary Poppins was not looking, and when they cried, he said in a falsely kind voice, "Why, darlings, what is the matter?" But Mary Poppins was not deceived by it. "You've got something coming to you," she said significantly, but the burning thing inside him would not let him care. He just shrugged his shoulders and pulled Jane's hair. After that he went to the supper table and upset his bread and milk. "And that," said Mary Poppins, "is the end. Such deliberate naughtiness I never saw in all my born days. I never did, and that's a fact. Off you go, straight into bed with you, and not another word." He had never seen her look so terrible, but still he didn't care. He went into the night nursery and undressed. But no, he didn't care. He was bad, and if they didn't look out, he'd be worse. He didn't care. He hated everybody. If they weren't careful, he would run away and join a circus. There. Off went a button. Good. There would be fewer to do up in the morning. And another. All the better. Nothing in the world could make him feel sorry. He would get into bed without brushing his hair or his teeth, certainly without saying his prayers. He was just about to get into bed, and indeed had one foot already in, when he noticed the compass lying on top of the chest of drawers. Very slowly he withdrew his foot and tiptoed across the room. He knew now what he would do. He would take the compass and spin it, and go round the world. Then they'd never find him again, and it would serve them right. Without making a sound, he lifted a chair and put it against the chest of drawers. Then he climbed up on it and took the compass in his hand. He moved it. "North, south, east, west," he said very quickly, in case anybody should come in before he got well away. A noise behind the chair startled him, and he turned round guiltily, expecting to see Mary Poppins. But instead there were 4 gigantic figures bearing down toward him. The Eskimo with a spear, the Negro lady with her husband's huge club, the Mandarin with a great curved sword, and the Red Indian with a tomahawk. They were rushing upon him from all 4 corners of the room, with their weapons raised above their heads, and instead of looking kind and friendly as they had done this afternoon, they now seemed threatening and full of revenge. They were almost on top of him, their huge, terrible, angry faces looming nearer and nearer. He felt their hot breath on his face and saw their weapons tremble in their hands. With a cry, Michael dropped the compass. Mary Poppins, help me, he screamed and shut his eyes tight. He felt something envelop him, something soft and warm. Oh, what was it? The fur coat of the Eskimo, the Mandarin's cloak, the Red Indian's doeskin tunic, the Black Lady's feathers? Which of them had caught him? Oh, if only he had been good, if only... Mary Poppins, he wailed as he felt himself carried through the air and set down on something still softer. Oh, dear Mary Poppins! All right, I'm not deaf, I'm thankful to say. No need to shout, he heard her saying calmly. He opened one eye. He could see no sign of the 4 gigantic figures of the compass. He opened the other eye to make sure. No, not a glint of any of them. He sat up. He looked round the room. There was nothing there. Then he discovered that the soft thing that was round him was his own blanket, and the soft thing he was lying on was his own bed. And oh, the heavy burning thing that had been inside him all day had melted and disappeared. He felt peaceful and happy, as if he would like to give everybody he knew a birthday present. What happened?" he said rather anxiously to Mary Poppins. "I told you that was my compass, didn't I? Be kind enough not to touch my things, if you please," was all she said, as she stooped and picked up the compass and put it in her pocket. Then she began to fold the clothes that he had thrown down on the floor. "Shall I do it?" he said. "No, thank you." He watched her go into the next room, and presently she returned and put something warm into his hands. It was a cup of milk. Michael sipped it, tasting every drop several times with his tongue, making it last as long as possible so that Mary Poppins should stay beside him. She stood there without saying a word, watching the milk slowly disappear. He could smell her crackling white apron and the faint flavor of toast that always hung about her so deliciously, but try as he would, he could not make the milk last forever, and presently, with a sigh of regret, he handed her the empty cup and slipped down into the bed. He had never known it to be so comfortable, he thought, and he thought, too, how warm he was, and how happy he felt, and how lucky he was to be alive. "Isn't it a funny thing, Mary Poppins?" he said. "I've been so naughty, and I feel so very good." "Humph!" said Mary Poppins, and she tucked him in and went away to wash up the supper things. And that's the end of chapter 6.